folks, welcome ye all to yet another podcast of mine. I'm taking you by surprise. Well, actually, am I though? So, I could post this up as a Flagons Up Friday, which is, when we would normally do these things, people, but it is in fact a Thursday. So, I think I'll probably post it up tonight, which is Thursday night. So, I am taking you by surprise. I could have recorded it and not told you that and just posted it up tomorrow, but as it happens, people, as it happens, I have a cheeky day off my day job tomorrow. And, just pulling that holiday time back. So thought I would have a little, long weekend, as it were. And I've been getting back into, let me say this and let me say no more, people. Flagons up to you all. So I'll have a little sip of this before I get going. We do have things to talk about, people. I have a gaming subject that I want to talk about, which you'll be familiar with by now because you'll have read the title. But I do have, it kind of surrounds itself around... encompasses, that's the word I was looking for. Encompasses a number of topics with regards to new gen, really. And we'll get to that a little bit later on. But so we do have much in the way of gaming to talk about of the world of new gen. And my week has been what's been going on this week? I've got me running going this week again after a week of not doing anything. And that kind of came about because where were we last week when I did my... Did I mention last week that I did a run a week ago on Monday? I did a run, and then the following day I thought I'm going to find something to do that on the days that I'm not running. And I apologise if I told this story last week, but I thought and I found these aerobic videos, for want of a better phrase for it, on YouTube. So I went looking for the ones that were challenging but not involving lots of equipment and stuff like that. But yeah, so anyway, I did one that was a sort of 10 minutes, it was 20 minutes, but 5 minutes of warming up either side and then it all cooling down. So it was 10 minutes worth in the middle to get myself going, and that was bloody hard work. And then I did the 40-minute one after that, and I could not walk for about a week. I mean, it was just unbelievable, people. Just because you can run 8.5k every other day does not mean that you can do aerobics, people. Let me tell you that, and let me tell you no more, because it is... I couldn't walk. I was in so much pain. Well, I could walk, but it was agony. But just getting up and sitting down, and oh, blimey. So anyway, I've yet to do them again. I am going to do them again. But the first time I actually felt like running again was this Tuesday just there. And so this was my second run this week. So I've done those. And then I was taking the day off tomorrow. So I thought, well, you know what? If I'm off on a Friday, then surely I should have a beer, shouldn't I? A flagon of ale, if you will, please. Barkeep. Well, there's no barkeep, I'm the barkeep. So yes, I've had a pretty good week. Things at work have been fine. Just been cracking on, just doing bits and bobs here, there, and everywhere, really, but sort of not working on any one thing, just a multitude of things that we're still trying to tidy up, of want of a better word, behind the scenes after the server situation the week before. So it's just been sort of a multitude of lots of different things, but plenty done nonetheless. And gaming-wise, for you guys, I did, and I promised you last week in last week's vlog that I would. I'm going to move back a little bit so that this is a bit of a better angle. That I would definitely be recording more stuff, because the week before I didn't manage to get. Well, I got 2 Skyrims up the week before, didn't I? So this week I've managed to get you. I can't even remember how many now. I think I've managed to get you. The only day you didn't get anything was Monday, because I recorded on Monday. So you got a Skyrim on Tuesday, you got a Skyrim and an Immortals Phoenix Rising every day since, pretty much. And you'll get another Skyrim in Immortals tomorrow, and you will get another Skyrim on Saturday morning. And on Saturday I will record more stuffs. So there'll be plenty more coming of that. So it's still an interesting one, because I'm still, and you guys can tell me in the comments below, I'm still struggling to find what keeps you guys hooked. The 6,500, more than that, 6,500 of you. And I still to this day struggle to find what it is that you commonly like and why you're here, because I don't get 6,500 views every time I put a video up. We're reaching a point now where, because of how things have been going, if a video doesn't reach 100 views, which for me is fantastic, if it doesn't reach that, which is that was the common denominator since the new gen consoles came in, that's the number that I was trying to hit, because it seems to become a common thing. If it starts not hitting that, then I feel like I'm putting something up that's not keeping people's interest. But then at the same time, I feel like something's not popular, but then I come back to it 3 weeks later and it's got 100 views. But there are, if you look back on the Immortals Fenyx Rising, they are now coming right down to probably the 70 marker. Some are lower than that now. So I mean that's fine. If we can keep an interested party up that's sort of 50 plus, then that's brilliant. I'll keep going, because I adore that game, and I'm going to keep playing it whether it's on camera or not. But I don't want the channel to suffer because I'm forcing that up when people want to see me doing other things. And a few people have asked me about doing some more Demon's Souls. Demon's Souls kind of died to me when that run back to the second boss became so painful. Like, I don't care about the bosses. The bosses are fine. But the run back to that second boss was so painful that I just put the controller down and I walked away. And that's when I started playing Dark Souls 3 again, because it was running at 60 FPS on the PlayStation 5 because of the patch it got on the Pro, PS4 Pro. And I mean, that game just is sublime. And I was having so much fun with it, and I still haven't recorded any more yet, and I know people are enjoying it. And the same with Fallout 4 on the 60 FPS mod. So I'm kind of hovering as to whether I should do another thing as well. But considering that I'm putting up a Skyrim and an Immortals Fenyx Rising pretty much every day that I managed to do a lump of recordings, I'm giving you quite a lot of content. Kingdoms of Amalur Re-Reckoning as well, I wanted to do a lot more of. But I'm just kind of struggling to see again. I mean, the Skyrim will always kind of pick itself up to 100 views, so I'm more than happy doing more Skyrim. And that's the sort of video that'll always pique people's interest, because it's that fudge of turning the 60 FPS mod on, but then turning it off, pretending so you get your trophies back, and it's running at 60 FPS. You've got your trophies on. People are always going to be interested to see that running that game at 60 FPS. So I'm more than happy doing more of that. I'm more than happy to do loads more of Immortals Fenyx Rising. I love that. I can't tell you how much I adore that game. Well, I have done, and I've said it many times, people. I adore that game. I do. So anyway, I will. At the moment, that's what I'm going to keep doing: Immortals Fenyx Rising and Skyrim. And if I get the itch to throw something else in there, then I will. And that itch would be Dark Souls 3, Kingdoms of Amalur, Fallout 4. Probably that would be the mix to pull from, which were the ones I was playing. Well, I was pretty much trying to bounce all of those around at the same time. Anyway, I just settled on these two to make my life a bit easier. So, yeah, let me know in the comments below. I keep asking you this question, so I'm going to keep asking it, and keep telling me what it is you want to see. And I will try my best to try. Obviously, I'm not going to be able to keep everybody happy, but I'd like to find games where I'm at least keeping a good chunk of you happy. And I think I have found that in Skyrim and the Immortals Fenyx Rising. Immortals Fenyx Rising, as I said before, the views became not as important because they were getting a lot of thumbs ups. Like, if you keep thumbsing it up, I will keep doing it. So, if you see that the view numbers are getting lower and you still want more of that game, then keep smacking that like button for me, because it's the only way that I know that you want more. If you don't hit that like button, I'll probably stop recording it and just play it off camera. So keep smacking the like button for me so I know that you want more. And, well, the same with anything, really. But the like button is what I look at. Like, I mean, I do look at the views, but I will, if there's a lot of likes per view ratio, I will absolutely keep doing that. As well as the amount of comments that come back. If there's loads of comments as well, I can see that people are interested. I just need to know that people are interested, and that's what will keep me going with the game. Because we know, I've tended not to finish a lot of the playthroughs because of that reason historically. I just feel like people aren't interested anymore, so I stop doing it and I just go and do something else. So, anywho, we do have some notes. By the way, people, if you haven't bought one of these before, it's the best invention since the history of anything electrical, really. Anything that powers by USB. It's a USB brick. And genuinely, I can charge my iPhone from that about 3 times. It's ridiculous. And it's just so handy. I actually, like, if I'm about to record this, for example, and I'm not sure if I still had, power in the camcorder, I don't have to go looking for a plug socket. I literally just plug the camcorder into that, and it was fine. So I've actually plugged it into my phone because my phone was about to die. But it's so handy. I use it for so many things to charge it up. It's unbelievable. I'm enjoying that a bit. It's going down, isn't it? Right, well, we have got a number of topics to talk about, people. The big topic is new gen, of course, which you'll have seen from the title. And, I've not told you, actually. I've not told you. The reason that I'm off tomorrow... well, A, I wanted a long weekend. But B, like I told you in a vlog or a podcast previous to this one, I've just remembered that in recording this that I've gone a bit rough the last few days, people. I've not bothered shaving, Lockdown, Lots of showering and running and stuff, but, I just thought, let it grow for a bit. And then I get to a point, it's like, it's got to come off again now. It's only when I start recording this sort of, well, it's the podcast, so I'll be a little bit smaller on screen, Just like I've put my hand in the ashtray and dabbed some darkness on my face. Right. Yes, the reason that I got, when I got I got BT Sport. I treated myself to BT Sport. It was a story from another podcast or vlog. But I got myself BT Sport to go with the Sky Sport that I already had, and at the same time I updated my deal with I had with BT on my broadband. And because of that, because I used to watch, back in the day, me and Aaron Brew used to watch the WWE all the time and the wrestling. I mean, it was our thing. We used to watch it. Just loved it. That was back in the golden era. That was Stone Cold Steve Austin and everything else. But as time went on, I didn't have Sky for a fair while, to the point where I could see it, and then because it was on Sky for years, the Raw and SmackDowns, and then it moved to BT, so I just kind of didn't watch it at all at that point. So even when I got, that's right, because when I got Sky for the house eventually, which was a couple of years ago, it was that year that they were moving it to BT, and I was like, well, that's great, because I've just got Sky Sport and now I can't watch it. So now that I've got back into, now that I got BT Sport, I've just got back into Raw and SmackDown. And I've been watching the last number of weeks, and then of course the Royal Rumble was a week or so ago, it might be 2 weeks now. But I've just sort of caught up with my Raw and SmackDowns. And the Royal Rumble, the ones that are recorded now are the ones that were after the Royal Rumble. And I thought, well, I'd rather save them, and I'll watch the Royal Rumble. So because you can buy the WWE Network, which has got all of the pay-per-views on it anyway, for £10 a month. You can cancel it at any time. So I'll just buy it for this month and watch the Royal Rumble. So I'm going to watch. So, but the idea is that I'm going to record this for you guys, have a bit of a therapy session with myself into this camera, as I do. And once I've rendered all this together and get that uploading for you, I'm going to sit with a few more of me flagons and watch the Royal Rumble. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It's been a while since I've just sort of chilled out and watched a big event like that. The Royal Rumble was always my favourite. I think it was always Aaron's as well. Although, WrestleMania was a big deal back in the day. But there's something about the Royal Rumble, I just love it. Getting everybody over the top rope. And, of course, you get 2 now, because you get the women's one first and then you get the men's one after. So it's just fantastic. It's just great fun. I've always loved the pro wrestling, WWE wrestling. And I have actually, in the meantime, I started watching the AEW, which is All Elite Wrestling, which is on ITV at the minute. Because it is, they've got a fantastic wrestling on there, and they're just starting to build that product up really well. And it is a good competitor. It's the first good competitor that WWE have had in a long time. And it's got major money behind it as well. So it's only going to get better and better. But WWE's still got that touch of class sort of wrapped around it. And they do, in my opinion, still have the best quality of wrestlers. AEW have got great wrestlers, but they've not got as many good wrestlers as, and big names as WWE have. in my humble opinion. Whether or not the wrestling's better or worse is entirely up to you to decide. But there is some fantastic... The best stuff still for me on AEW is Chris Jericho's stuff. And the Inner Circle and all that stuff is just priceless. It's brilliant. I mean, the man's an absolute master at knowing what to do on the wrestling type stuff, you know. He's just... I mean, they need somebody of that caliber to be ready to take over from him when he decides that he's, you know, because he's not getting any younger. I mean, he's still doing a great job, but you can see he's not the man that he used to be. But he's still, you know, still well holding his own. And he's still one of the best people on the mic, you know. I have to say, though, I mean, after not watching WWE for a while, Drew McIntyre's actually, I mean, he's just realised, I mean, just watching the last few weeks, realising that he's the WWE champion now. I mean, what a beast he's turned into. I mean, he's becoming a proper legend. He's an absolute animal, that guy. Brilliant. Fantastic champion to have. I mean, he's really come into his own now, I think. So, anyway, this isn't a wrestling podcast, people. But anyway, that's why I'm off tomorrow. Because I thought, well, if I can have a few beers tonight, watch the Royal Rumble, which is about 3 hours long. By the time I start watching it, it'll be quite late into the night and stuff. So I thought, nice to have the lie-in tomorrow. And then just have an extended weekend. So there you are. So... Well, just before I started recording this, Aaron Brew sent me a text saying that he'd just seen that Ratchet and Clank, the new Ratchet and Clank, Rift Apart, I think it is, isn't it? I think it's called, and it's out on the the release date's June the 11th. So, if you didn't know that, you do now. June the 11th is the release date. I mean, come on now. They said it would be out the launch window of PS5. I don't think that's the launch window of PS5, is it? You can't have a 7-month launch window. Come on now. Yeah. Or is that a 6-month launch window? You know what I mean, though. Launch window. What the bloody hell's a launch window? Is it 3 years? Anyway, it's going to be a cracker. I mean, I'd rather have a cracking game than it be rushed anyway. And it will be. Insomniac are the best, aren't they? Right. So, the big topic for this particular vlog, people, or podcast as we are. I've had a number of interesting conversations with people since New Gen came out. And a number of conversations before New Gen arrived, to be fair, as to what the expectations of New Gen should be and what we were going to get and all that sort of thing. And as time's kind of rolled on a little bit, I've seen quite a number of comments on the videos that I've been posting up about, you know, all sorts of different things. And it's just led to a constant conversation about what exactly were you expecting from these consoles? Because there seems to be an awful lot of disappointment flying around when there really shouldn't be. Because my personal opinion is that people have set their expectations far too high. Like, you know, and I don't think it's their fault. I think the way that New Gen was sold to us on 4K 60 FPS. At 120 FPS, you know, like, but you got to look at the way they've been wording this stuff, and you can only look at what we've seen already as actual proper New Gen titles, of which there's only one proper one, and it's Demon's Souls remake. And you know, you can't, like, if you were walking into this gen of console expecting 4K 60 FPS, that was a pipe dream. In my opinion, you were living in a dreamland, because and I'm saying this based on RPGs more than anything, but there will be games that can do it. But if you're looking at things like, you know, Fallout, Skyrim's, Horizon Zero Dawn's, you know, what we've been looking at recently. I mean, even Immortals Phoenix Rising, you know, it's hard to judge those titles, you know, but Immortals Phoenix Rising is kind of it really is a PS4 game with a patch, isn't it? It's not been written specifically for PS5. So the only one we've got to judge is Demon's Souls. But you should not be expecting, the only way that you're going to get 60 FPS or 120 FPS with a high graphics mode is on things that don't have a lot going on in the environment, right? So things that are quite static in their surroundings. I mean, they're moving, but you're not running through it. Things like Forza Horizon, right? They're claiming that that's going to be 4K 60 FPS. Fine, get that. Things like, if you look at Gears is a good example actually, because Gears multiplayer, it's 120 frames per second. You know, I'm not sure what the fidelity is, the graphical fidelity is on it. Pretty sure might be 4K, could be 1440p. But if you look at stuff like that, you're looking at enclosed map areas. You're looking at not much going on around. You know, there's not going to be a big bunch of trees and mist and water and everything. You know, like you're not talking about a big open area. You're talking about a contained space. Forza Horizon, yeah, you're driving around a big track, but it's still a contained space. Well, Forza Motorsport is set tracks. Forza Horizon kind of going around all the, you know, flying over the land and all that sort of stuff. It'd be interesting to see what they bring us in a comparison to Horizon versus Motorsport, say. But they're even talking about Halo. I'm sure they said that Halo campaign would be 4K 60. But now that I think about it, I think they might have said that on multiplayer. But I'm not convinced we're going to get that with the campaign. If we do, then that'd be very impressive. But that Master Chief Collection is still, you know, it's not the early ones certainly. I mean, they look a lot better than they ever did. But they're very sticky in places. They're not solid frame rates. You know, they had problems getting that stuff to run better anyway. The later ones were a lot better, and you know, like 3 and, well, actually, I've not played 4. To be fair, I played it when it first came out on the 360, but I've not played it on the last one I did was 3. Finished that off. I didn't actually move on because I did 1, 2, and 3 back to back. So it's going to be very interesting to see. If anybody can manage to do 4K 60, it will be the first party studios. For me, the third party studios are already showing us what they can or cannot do. And, you know, one of those, I mean, this is an old set of images I've got up behind me that you've seen before in one of my other podcasts, but a lot of the images are from Assassin's Creed. And we've talked about Assassin's Creed Valhalla and my disappointment with that game, because we strove into the new gen. It was the one thing I'd bought for the Xbox Series X, and it was bloody awful. Like, I mean, the game's great, but the actual fidelity of the graphics and stuff was bloody awful. So they clearly they clearly couldn't make it run the way they wanted to make it run at 60 FPS. And, you know, they had screen tearing all over it. They've managed to patch it up a bit now, and it does look a lot better. I haven't gone back and play it properly. But I think it does highlight either the issues they have in developing a game that was clearly for last gen, but trying to bring it to this gen, the lack of time they'd had with the Xbox, because these problems were not as inherent on the PS5. There were still smaller issues, but there wasn't as big issues with the PS5. And it's supposed to be a fantastic game. Aaron Brew just finished it, and he said it was amazing. He said it's the best game he's played on new gen so far, and he's right into the Assassin's Creeds at the minute when they opened them up and stuff. He was into the Origins and Odyssey as well. So, but he thinks this is the best one yet, you know, from that more open style of them. But I think we have to be realistic about what to expect. Like, you can't expect the open world games to be 4K 60. It's not going to happen. And I had this conversation with Aaron Brew as well. He's like, well, let me go through this in some sort of order, right? So, were we expecting 4K 60 FPS? I was, as I've said, I was expecting it on certain types of games, right? And that is exactly what's happening. And are we going to get it in open world games? No, not in my opinion. We'll be looking at, you know, an option, which is what we're getting now from the patches they do on the last gen stuff. And then we get an upgrade to, we get a patch to the new consoles. And those patches generally give us an option to say, do you want to play it in 30 and have 4K, or do you want to play it in 60 and have 60 FPS and have, you know, whatever they can manage, 1200p was the, what game was that? 1200 was, it was Jedi Fallen Order on the PlayStation 5. It's 1200p, so it's still better than 1080, but it's playing at a really smooth 60. It's gorgeous. It looks amazing. Would I love it to be in 4K? Of course I would, yeah, but you've got to be realistic. You know what I mean? It's a big old game, and it's got a lot of open areas. The other thing to consider is you can't really judge it all on patching games from last gen to try and give them more performance this gen, because those games weren't built with software that was designed to take advantage of these new consoles. And they are, without, I mean, anyone who's sitting feeling disappointed about these consoles shouldn't be, because the more we go on with these consoles, we're going to see some amazing stuff from them. But the software that these games have been written on were written for the last generation, and therefore there's only so much a patch can do. You can't ask a patch to rewrite the entire code base in order to understand the entire architecture of the new systems. It's not going to happen. Like, so they patch it as best they can to give you what the best they can out of that is. And generally speaking, it's like, well, we'll give you the ability now to run it at 60, which will be nice and smooth with your Uber power, but you just have to have the little, drop in graphics, but it won't be as mad as, the Pro, for example. Like, a lot of the patches some of the patches for the PS4 Pro have carried forward and just work better. Like, they haven't repatched it. Like, Dark Souls 3 is a prime example of it. It just went, I'm allowed to run at 60, and on the PS4 Pro, it tried to, but it was always dipping. On the PS5, it's just smooth as butter. Need some biscuits there. Smooth as butter. So there's only so much you can do with a patch. Like, you can't redesign the game with it. You can only open up the ability to use the extra juice that it's finding and is capable of finding. So, we're not going to see what these consoles are proper sort of set up to do and capable of until we see the stuff they're writing that is solely for it. And Aaron's point was that surely the stuff from last gen should be playing at 4K 60. Like, but for me, that's not quite. I think the point is as well, I don't think we're going to see a huge leap in what we're seeing on screen visually, so far as animations and stuff go. We will see a much more improved, character faces and stuff like that, but I don't think those games were that far away from being for next gen, but they just didn't design them specifically for it. So I think they were already pushing the boundaries of what we're going to be, Jedi Fallen Order is a prime example. Like, it was all over the place on the basic consoles on the last gen. Plays like a dream on the new gen. And it is, in all intents and purposes, if somebody had released that as a new gen game, you would be sitting there going, bloody hellfire, that's amazing, it looks incredible. It's going to be very interesting to see what the big step ups are. But make no mistake, this generation of console is £500 for a reason. You know what I mean? These are beastly consoles. I know that in the world of PCs, they're not as they're not a high end PC. They're thousands of pounds. But for a console, this is a lot of power. If you try and buy a PC with the same specs, you're not going to get it for 500 quid. So we're getting a lot of bang for our buck, and it is a proper massive jump. It's a much bigger jump than we got from the PS3 to the PS4 and the 360 to the Xbox One. It's a much bigger jump than that, because we're not just talking about graphic power. We're talking about a whole new architecture. We're talking about SSDs. We're talking about loading times that are ridiculously fast. I mean, it's just, these are amazing machines. But people seem to be getting disappointed because it's like, yeah, but they're not playing at 4K 60 and it should be easy. It's like, no, that's not what... These consoles were never getting... Like, you ask any PC gamer and they will tell you that it takes an uber amount of power to run all the games at 4K 60. People don't quite realise what the jump from 1080p to 4K is. It's a huge graphic jump. It's massive. It's not the same as going from 720 to 1080. It's not as big. Like, that was tiny in comparison. So 1080p to 4K is huge. Like, the fidelity of graphic jump is like redonkulously big. So when somebody tells you that a game will play at 60 FPS and it's in 1440p, that is a massive achievement, and it's bloody gorgeous. So that's the balance. I think what we can expect from the better RPGs, and certainly the first-person games, is we might well get that 1440p at 4K for these more open-world type games. And absolutely, we'll see some 4K 60 stuff, and even 4K 120 FPS stuff when we start talking about some of the multiplayer, enclosed maps, driving games, football games, sport games, all of that sort of stuff may well do that, because you're not talking about the same camera spinning and trees and water and mist and like all the things, all the environmental things you've got to take into account for an open world game. Another one we got talking about was Aaron was disappointed that he was just trying out the patch for the gonna forget the name of it, Control. Got updated for new gen, but the 60 FPS version of the game, it's not 1080p. I don't think. I think it's 1200p or something. I can't remember, but you have to take the graphical drop. If you want 4K and ray tracing is another conversation. If you want to take the 4K and ray tracing option, then of course you're down to 30 FPS. And he was totally, he's like, why do I have to make this choice? Like, surely it should just be capable of doing all this. I mean, that is never going to happen. You're never going to have 60 FPS. Well, certainly a game like that, 60 FPS with 4K with ray tracing, it's never going to happen. But you've got to remember that there's things coming along that are going to replace ray tracing and say, well, you don't need ray tracing because this does it better. And that example came when we looked at that. Do you remember that PS4, Unreal Engine 4? Was it Unreal Engine 5? I can't remember where we are now. I'm sure it's Unreal Engine 4. But the newer Unreal Engine, and we saw that demo on the PlayStation 5 of the character, I'll try and find the footage so I can put it behind me. And that was a prime example of making use of that whole new engine and how the lighting and everything can be dealt with. And it was doing it all without ray tracing. It was doing a whole other thing. And that software was designed to not need to rely on ray tracing, which is super graphics heavy. And this thing just deals with it inside the engine in a really cool way and does it better from what we were seeing. So that's going to be really interesting to see when that stuff starts coming in. Then we might actually start seeing people get close to doing something like, well, especially, it'll certainly make 1440p a walk in the park, I would think. And then you'll have possibly some of the stuff coming out at 4K 60. But I think when we're talking about open world RPG type games, we're definitely going to be looking at, a 60 1440p as the max. And that is gorgeous, people. Honestly, I would take 60 FPS and 1080p before I'll go anywhere near 4K. I can't go back to 30 frames per second now that I've seen 60 FPS. Every time I put something on that's 30, bloody eyes are hurt. It just looks jittery all over the place. I can't get used to it. So, 60 frames per second for me is sublime. And I'd rather play something at 1080p at 60 than 4K 30, but any shadow of a doubt. But I think what we'll tend to see as a matter of course is we'll get 60 FPS with 1440p, and it'll be stunning. And the first party stuff might push the boundaries further. And it might go even further when this new software, the new Unreal Engine, starts kicking in. And we get all of these, new software text behind the stuff as well. And the other thing to consider is something Aaron wasn't aware of when he was talking about Control. And you wouldn't be as a general player. As a general player, you just think, right, I've got all the action going on. It's a really fun game. But why can't I have it in 60 FPS and 4K? And ray tracing, you know what I mean? But that game is actually a technical marvel, that engine, even though people don't quite see it on the surface. But if there's a good, really, really good Digital Foundry breakdown when they did a video. You can go and check it out. And they were doing a side-by-side comparison of the PS5 version, I think it was, against the PC. And it might have been the Series X. They might have done both. I can't remember now. But he was breaking down why that engine is so spectacular. And when it first came out on a high-end PC, it was just awesome. Obviously, it was cut down for the consoles because it had to be. And it was very sticky on the base consoles on the old system. But if you walk into any room, any place on that game, you can basically break apart anything in the room. You can shoot it to bits, you can blow it up, and it breaks each individual thing down to its base components, little tiny things, everything, pencils, wood splitting up, it breaks everything in the room, and you can pick it up and you can throw it, and no other game has ever done that before to that level. The underworkings of that game are hardcore. There's a lot of work going on. And it's not, that sort of stuff's not taken into consideration when people just look on the surface of it and go, but it's not 4K 60 FPS. It's like, yeah, but if you want 4K 60 FPS, then you need to dump that entire engine that's doing that breakdown for you, and you'll just have to pick up an entire desk and throw it at somebody because you can't smash things up. But you can smash everything in a room. Like, it's incredible what that game is capable of. The only reason I didn't, I think I got, I think I just got fed up trying to find me where I am the place, and because the loading screens weren't too quick, it just got a bit frustrating. I think I will go back to it at some point now. The loading screens will be faster, and it plays smoother. So there's a lot to think about when you look at a game. You can't just look at every game and judge them equally. Like, you can't say, well, that RPG did it, so that one should, or that action game did it, so that one should. It's like, well, hang on a minute. Like, you need to look at, like, what did that game do that maybe that game doesn't? Or, you know, you have to look a little bit deeper. And judging everything on the surface simply by 60 FPS 4K is, and on this gen of consoles, is never a fair marker anyway. So I think people need to start setting their standards to what what realistically they should be, and if anything comes above that, then great. But I think the reality is, and Demon's Souls has kind of proved it as the only real new gen game, is that 1440p 60 is where the bar is set for new gen games, and that's a first party game, remember. So I think that's a telltale sign of what we can expect, and that's a fairly open game, you know, but it's not open world. So there is a linear element to all the Dark Souls games. They feel open, but they're not as open as you think they are. So it'll be interesting to see something like Horizon Zero Dawn or Horizon Forbidden West, whatever the next one is, and see what something like that's capable of, or, you know. But I think third-party developers are still I think it's going to take them a long time to get their teeth stuck into how they make that happen. I mean, is Starfield going to be 60 FPS? It's certainly not going to be 4K, is it? If it's a wide open world like Skyrim was or what have you. So I think there will be a trade-off. Like, if you want to play it at 60 at 4K in ray tracing, then fine, but you have to be at 30 FPS. If you want to, it's still to look good, but just not the shiniest it could possibly be at 60. And for me, 60 looks way better anyway, because all you end up with on the 4K version is jittery on your eyes anyway. So it's far smoother and cleaner for me and crisper on 60 FPS. So it's going to be really interesting to see how they all tackle it, and how things develop and change with the new software when it all kicks in for developers. Unreal Engine's only one of them, of course. A lot of them have their own software engines, or might have made their, and, you know, I'm pretty sure that Bethesda said they've rewritten their engine, which they hadn't done since way back in Oblivion / Morrowind time or something. There was a nice shiny new surface on it every time they went up a level, but it's the same engine. So they've been building a whole new engine. I seem to remember Todd Howard talking about it. Everything was being built from the ground up. So it's going to be really interesting to see how first-party studios are dealing with it. Are they changing their engines? Are they going to stick with the same ones? And, you know, as always, I think we'll get more out of the first-party studios because they know how to soak up that juice more than the third parties do in the end, because they're very, very primed just on their particular product. Whereas if you look at third-party developers, pretty much all of them will design it for a PC top end first and then try and cut things back and bring it down to console level. I think that's pretty much how most of them work. But when it comes to developers for the studios and for the console, the first parties, the PlayStations and Xboxes, they should be building them on their console. I have a feeling that Microsoft don't. I've got a feeling that Microsoft build them on PCs. but then they are more primed to sell to that market. Sony do eventually end up putting stuff on PC market, but I think, generally speaking, I think they are tending to design and develop on their own console first and foremost, and then they have a look at what they can do on a PC. So, I mean, these consoles are technically PCs anyway, but the new architectures are above and beyond a lot of PCs, even the high-end ones at the minute, because the architectures are so good on these new consoles for that super fast speed, you know, no bottlenecks, and you know, you can stick SSD in anything, but it won't be super fast unless the architecture underneath can carry it as fast as it was delivering it. And that's where the magic is in these consoles. So it's going to be super interesting to see how they get around these challenges as developers. But we really need to start. I'm not going to use lowering expectations, because that makes it sound like the consoles aren't any good. The consoles are fantastic, and I can tell you from after using them for 3 months now, they're absolutely amazing. So there's nothing wrong with the consoles. It's the expectation level is far too high, especially at this stage of them. We've only had them for a few months. Developers have not had them long enough either, and you can see that from Valhalla, because clearly Ubisoft was struggling to figure out how to make that game work at 60 FPS, or it wouldn't have been such a bloody mess. And they've clearly figured out more. Microsoft, I think, ended up working with them to mop it up and clean it up and figure out how to get around the architecture and stuff like that. I think they'd had a longer time with the PS5, which is why it didn't suffer so much there. So it's going to be really, really interesting. But I think, you need to know what is a realistic expectation just in general, nothing to do with these consoles. Like 4K 60 FPS on big games that are open worlds, like, you've got to calm yourself down. Like, that's like you're talking £2,000 PCs. Like, they can't even, and a lot of those struggle to do it at a steady rate. So you need to just calm yourself down a little bit. If we can, as I say, if we can get 1440p at 60 FPS as a common thing in RPG world, open worlds, big worlds, that would be superb, and it would be a massive boon for us on these new consoles. If we get more than that from some, amazing, absolutely amazing. We'll really see what they can do when we get midway through the life cycle of them, I'm sure. But I think, carry your expectations reasonably. You can't expect every game to be 60 FPS 4K. It's not going to happen. At best, you're going to get linear games maybe capable of it, sport games, racing games, that sort of stuff. But you're never going to get 4K 60 FPS, in my opinion, in big open world games and stuff like that. So, and you've got to, like, as I say, you've got to look deeper than the surface. Like, look at what the game is doing and achieving inside of it. And then, I don't know how people sit and judge like that anyway. It's almost like they see the option in the menu and then they're like, oh, well, that's just shit because it should be capable of 4K blah. It's like, wait a minute, right? Maybe what you should do is just turn the game on and play it, and then you'll probably just go, God, this looks amazing. And then you'll go to the menu about an hour later and go, oh, it's only actually running at, well, say only. It's only running at 1080p 60. Honestly, like, I think people are making a judgment call based on what they're seeing in a menu rather than what they're seeing on screen, frankly. It's the placebo effect, isn't it? It's like if you gave somebody the game and said, right, play that and tell me what it's playing at, I bet you they couldn't tell you. I bet they couldn't tell the difference between 1440p and 4K if you actually sat them down in front of two screens. You know what I mean? And side by side, they probably would. But if you were to give them, like, straight off the bat without seeing anything else and stop them down with a game that was 1440p 60 FPS and say, is that 4K or not? I bet you they couldn't answer with surety at all. And until you sat it down side by side with one that was 4K, and even then, you'd probably still be looking for the crisp sides of a bloody rock. 4K is great, but you know what I mean, though. It genuinely is the placebo effect. If you didn't give people the visual or tell them what it was, I bet you half of them couldn't even tell you. So it's a judgment call being based on menu, really, I think. Anyway, have I rambled on long enough about it? Anyway, let me know in the comments below about, I know a lot of you haven't managed to get the console yet, but that for those of you that have, or in fact, for those of you who haven't, what have you thought of the gameplay I've been posting up? I know you can only see it in 1080p, but it is 60 FPS and what have you that I'm bringing you. But for me, just seeing the games in 60 FPS is a massive jump forward anyway. And any graphical fidelity they give us above that is with that is fantastic. But let me know in the comments below what you think. What's your opinion? For those people that have the consoles, that have been playing games and last-gen games, what's been your opinion so far? How have you found it? And have you been disappointed, or have you been happy, or do you think people are expecting too much? As I say, the big point is going to come as the first-party stuff hits. But we should really take Demon's Souls as a guide, as a marker as to what we should expect, really, I think. But it's a marker of a particular type of game and a particular size of game. You can't use that marker for Horizon Zero Dawn, in my opinion, because it's just like, it's like a massive open world. Like, you can't compare the two things. Was there anything else I had on my list of things to talk about? Yes, ray tracing we covered, didn't we? So, well, there you are. I may have rambled on long enough, people. But yeah, it'll be interesting. I don't even know how long I've been talking for, to be honest with you, because now that I've got the little slideshow going behind me, I can't see the little thing that tells me how long I've been recording for is hidden by the screen. This what's it called? Why am I having a mind blank on that? Slideshow. Jesus Christ, people! It's no wonder I'm taking a day off. My brain stopped working. I think it stopped working the minute I signed out of my work machine, to be fair. So there you are. Yeah. Anyway, I'm genuinely interested in your thoughts and opinions on this subject, because I'm just continuously surprised at what people were expecting, like straight off the bat here, at least, and what they're expecting anyway. I mean, I don't know. Maybe maybe because I'm a computery person and I understand what hardware is capable of to some degree. Maybe I just didn't set an expectation that was so high. I knew what my want was out of these new consoles, especially after hearing about what Demon's Souls was going to play as and all that sort of stuff. And that game is stunning, guys. It's a stunning game. And it's smooth as butter as well. Really, really nice. And I don't know, maybe it's just because of the world I live in that I had more reasonable expectation than other people. But, there's been a few people comment on the channel that just, and I've said to them, like, your expectations are way too high. Like, you're never going to get that. But they're like, oh, these are Uber consoles, they should be capable of it. It's like, no, it's not as simple as that. And you've got to look at the type of game. You've got to look at, look at what just in itself, look at what people spend on a high-end PC, and look at the fact that those things can't even, a lot of them can't even play a steady 60 frames per second with 4K and ray tracing on them. That's the sort of power that even with that immense amount of power, you're still having to tweak things, and you've got to give something up to get something back. It's not like, I don't know why the expectations were that high, because it's just not realistic. You've got to remember the platforms we're playing on. And make no mistake, these are Uber consoles, people. They really are. But you can't be judging them on every game not running at 60 FPS 4K. Can't be. It's just not realistic at all, especially with ray tracing. But anyway, we'll see what comes, though. I mean, hey, we might get 3 years down the road and three open world games come out and they're all 4K 60. I doubt it, but someone might prove me wrong. But I'm pretty sure that I read somewhere that Horizon Forbidden West was not going to be running at 4K 60. I'm pretty sure I know that. And in fact, I'm sure I read somewhere that game was going to be 30 frames per second. There was certainly no massive. No, I mean, I think they said that it was still a PS4 game. It wasn't a PS5 written game. So again, it'll be a game that comes with a patch, and it'll be a game that comes with a trade-off. I'm convinced of it. So it's going to be very interesting. But do let me know in the comments below, people. Let's see where we are in 2 years' time. I might be proved wrong. You know what I mean? Lots of games coming. I mean, May's a big month. There's loads coming out in May. Resident Evil 8 being a big one. Not sure I'll be doing that on day one, though. I'm more a fan of the third-person ones. We've talked about that before, though. And then we now know that Ratchet & Clank's coming in. Ratchet & Clank's going to be an interesting one. But again, it's not a big open world. They're big open areas, but it is a linear story with big open puzzle areas. So maybe a game like that might come along at 64K. But I think even they might have mentioned what it was playing at when they first demoed it. I don't think it was full 4K. I think it might have been, but I think it was 60 with 1440 again. But it'd be interesting to see that, because that's a proper new that won't play on old gen machines. That'll only play on new gen machines. So that's written for PS5. So it'll be really interesting to see what the performance options are on that. Anyway, let me know in the comments below, people. Well, there you are. That's all I've got to talk about now. And it's probably a good thing, because I probably have been talking for about 25 years. Not quite. So there you are, folks. It has been an honour and a privilege serving for you once again in this podcast of mine. And I shall catch you in the next one, folks. Take it easy. Bye.